Competition and the Fallen Nature. Welcome to another episode of the Christian Economist. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott. In the Christian worldview, we believe three things. God created a perfect world. Fallen humans have messed it up. We can find redemption through Jesus Christ. Let's see if we can apply those to our economic world today, as I've done in a little blue book that you'll find on my website called Economics in the Christian Worldview. But you only have to understand these three things to understand the question about how do we regulate an economy in a fallen world. God made us with unlimited wants, but he made a world with limited resources. In economics, we call that scarcity. So we think this unlimited wants came from the fallen nature. We think then God made a world with limited resources. How do we distribute them? That's the economic and Christian question. What does the Bible tell us about how to distribute goods in a fallen world? Because we have unlimited wants and limited resources. Generally, our answer from the Christian economics point of view is competition. So it can be seen as only two ways to regulate commerce. You can either have government regulation or competition. One or the other. Nobody believes in perfect government regulation. Nobody believes in perfect competition. We're all across a continuum somewhere. As Christians, we tend to be on the side of competition because it's competition that produces more efficient results, better quality products at lower prices. The question about government regulation is who's going to regulate the regulators? They're fallen too. And so often in this public discussion, you'll hear a lot of criticisms of the free market and of capitalism. And yes, they are fallen, but government regulators are fallen also. So if you turn regulation over to them, who's going to regulate the regulators? That's the big question. So how do we regulate this society? Regulation or competition? We tend to think competition's better. The Free Market Forum is just a wonderful program put on by Hillsdale College. I highly recommend it. It's mostly for Christian economists like me. And in an interesting discussion last year about the power of Facebook. Are they a monopoly? Do they have power over society because of the information they have? And they had a really fascinating panel discussion. So afterward, I'm discussing it with my fellow professor, Justin Gandy. He teaches Developing a Christian Mind, which is our Christian worldview course at Dallas Baptist University. And in discussing this with Justin, we came to the conclusion that this is a competition, if you want to use that term, between the creative nature and the fallen nature. Justin and I stood there in the hall one day at DBU and decided this thing about Facebook having a monopoly will be decided either by the creative nature, meaning some other company will come up with something that competes with Facebook and take away their supposed monopoly, or the government will step in and regulate it. One or the other. See, because in the creative nature, you have people out there trying to make things like Facebook so that there will be competition. But in the fallen nature, you say Facebook wants a monopoly. Who's going to win? So many months ago, we stood in the hallway and had that discussion and said, okay, that's it. It's going to be either the creative nature of somebody come up with a competitor or the fallen nature, and government's going to have to regulate. You know what I heard just last week? 1/2 of American teenagers are on a Facebook competitor called TikTok. That's our answer. In this case, the creative nature won. And if we allow it to, most of the time, it will. But we do know that these people in business have a fallen nature also. So how do we control that? Well, antitrust regulation is the way we do it in the U.S., and the purpose of that regulation is to maintain competition. See, this is this interesting intersection between government and commerce. So in 1890, the Sherman Act was the first antitrust act, and it's still referred to quite often. But the purpose is to maintain competition. I've got a slide that I put up in my classes at Dallas Baptist University, and it shows the 3-firm concentration ratio in various industries. So the tennis ball industry, which actually I worked for a few years, 100% of the tennis balls are sold by 3 companies. I can only name 2. Wilson and Penn. Schlesinger or Dunlop might be a very small third. 3 credit cards, you can name them, MasterCard, Visa, and American Express, have 99% of the business. Batteries, 94% of the batteries in the U.S. are sold by 3 companies: Duracell, Eveready, Energizer. Soft drinks. 93% of the soft drinks sold in America are controlled by Coke, Pepsi, or Dr. Pepper. Breakfast cereals. 92% of the breakfast cereals sold in America are produced by 3 companies: Kellogg's, General Mills, and Post. Get the point? This is 3-firm concentration. This should make us worry because, to use soft drinks as an example, you may wonder why it costs $1.50 to get a 12-ounce soft drink at your convenience store. Picture this. You've got these 3 companies delivering soft drinks: Pepsi, Coke, and Dr. Pepper. As they're wheeling them in the convenience store, one of the delivery guys will wink at one of the other delivery guys. What does this mean? This means, next week I'm considering raising my price. It would be nice if you'd go with me. In a 3-firm concentration ratio, it's easy to control prices. If there's 4, it's harder. If it's 5, it's even harder. If there's 6 competitors, it's almost impossible. Do you see the point of competition? Because competition controls the fallen nature. Coke, Pepsi, and Dr. Pepper all want to raise their price. They're able to do so if there's only 3 of them. But if there's 5 or 6, you cannot do it. So let's go back to the Sherman Act of 1890. Why was it formed? Because the robber barons, as they were called, at the turn of the 18th into the 19th into the 20th century, were guys like Carnegie and Vanderbilt and John Jacob Astor. And these guys were controlling their industries and were taking over and concentrating their industries in ways that we knew if they had a fallen nature, they would take advantage of them. Now, there's some interesting sidelights, ways in which they did not. And there's a really good 5-minute video on PragerU by a Hillsdale professor named Bert Folsom, where he talks about Rockefeller. And actually, during Rockefeller's monopoly of kerosene on the East Coast, price of kerosene went from 23 cents a gallon to 14 cents a gallon. So Rockefeller did some really good things. I highly recommend a 5-minute video on PragerU by Bert Folsom, Folsom. Carnegie did some good things too. He built a library in a little town in the prairies of South Dakota where I grew up, and I attended rented books from a Carnegie library. So they did some good things with their outcome. But we as Christians have no question that monopolies are bad because we believe in the fallen nature. See, if you don't believe in the fallen nature, it's fine to give somebody a monopoly. But if you believe they have this fallen nature, you want to control it. Our question today is, which controls the fallen nature better, competition or regulation? See, this thing we went through in the United States, this time in the early 1900s where we had the robber barons, we overcame it with laws like the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 and then the Clayton Act of 1914. And we essentially overcame it. We still have more concentration than I would like to have, but we largely overcame it. Russia is currently going through this with their oligarchs owning many of their industries. My prediction is they will not get out of it because they do not have the Judeo-Christian underpinnings that the United States have. I think they will remain there. I think they'll continue to have trouble. So the competition we tend to think is a good thing. These guys, though, that made these fortunes, listen to this. 3 of those robber barons passed down fortunes to 8 families. Now, those 3 robber barons were Cornelius Vanderbilt, John Jacob Astor, and Andrew Carnegie. The 3 of them passed their fortunes down to 8 families. But by 1982, this was the first year that Forbes made their richest 400 list. Think about how many of those 8 families and their descendants were on the list in 1982. The answer is 0. And there never has been one since 1982. Forbes continues to do their richest 400. What is the point? Competition. Competition is good. The people who inherited these riches were not able to compete. Therefore, they lost their position. Competition is good. Pope Francis is the current Catholic Pope, and I've had the greatest respect for Catholic popes. This one has fallen off the rails a little bit, it seems to me. He actually has a phrase where he says capitalism kills. I'll give the Pope a break on this because he came from Argentina where they had something called crony capitalism, and that is not good. We see vestiges of that in the United States, but not very often. During the Obama administration, the Obamacare was thousands of pages long and had huge exceptions, and then the president made exceptions for people. Well, that's corruption. During the Trump administration, he's put on tariffs, but he's allowed exceptions. See, these are corruption things. This is the ways in which competition is not able to play itself out and control the fallen nature. Look, here's our theme on the Christian Economist today. People in a fallen world need to be regulated. What's the best way to regulate them? Competition. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Christian Economist, where our slogan is, Fear God, Tell the Truth, Earn a Profit. See you next time.